Okay, so once you've got Rhino open, you just want to go to Tools, down to Script here, and then we're going to say Edit. So that should, you can see down here, it takes a little bit of time just to load in. There's actually a couple of versions of Python, but it's Python 3 that we're going to want. Not Iron Python, which was an older version that has less functionality. And you can see actually, because I've used this before, it has already loaded NumPy and SciPy in. But I'll just run you through the process to make sure that you get them if you are using it for the first time. So I'm going to shut that script there, and we don't need to save anything. I'll just ask for a new script. So I'm going to say new Python 3, and then I go to this package icon here. So install a third-party package for this script. So I just want to click on it, and then obviously in here, I want NumPy and SciPy are the two packages that we're going to use. So this should be quite quick if they're installed already. It may take a few minutes for you to actually install everything if you haven't been through the process before on another machine. So once we've done that, we can just shut that down there, and then I'll just open up Grasshopper. So again, I'll pause while it loads. Okay, so now that Grasshopper is open, we can just run through the options that you want to make sure are turned on. And that should allow you just to follow the other videos that I'll produce a little more easily. So if we go up to here, the first one we want to have is we're going to use icons for the components. I just find them a little bit easier to follow. And because we're going to use the bifocals component, that will actually enable everything to be a little bit more straightforward because it provides you with component names as well, if that's useful. So we'll just click on draw icons. We also want to draw fancy wires. And if you remember, I discussed that that allows us to see a bit about how the data is structured, but going between different components. And then another option that I want is down in Canvas widgets. We just want the profiler turned on. So what that will do as we're building a Grasshopper definition is it allows us to see any of the components that are taking a little bit longer to run. And obviously, you know, that might be a concern in terms of finding bugs within our definition. But it's just kind of interesting to see the components that take longer to run as well. And then the final option over here that I want to make sure I have, so this is under view, I want to display obscure components. So you can see straight away now that up here there are way more components listed under each tab, and that's sort of how we want it. So the final one, and this is just to check that Python is installed properly. So if I go up to the Maths tab and then along here to Script, this collection of components, and then this is the one we want, the Python 3 script. And if I click that and drag it onto the canvas, that has successfully opened. We can just zoom in here. So zooming in, and then you can see that we're going to be using these, so we can add or take away inputs if we want. And similarly with the output, we can take away outputs or we can add additional outputs. If I right click on any one of these, you can see, as I've outlined in the notes, so we're going to need to make some decisions when we start to use this component. So we can decide to have item or list or tree access. And then the other thing that we need to decide for each of the inputs is what data type it is. So these are fairly standard. So we have Boolean, integer, string, or float are the main ones that we're going to use. But it is possible to use some inbuilt Grasshopper components as well. So things like point or list of points or vectors and planes and so on. Similarly, if we look at the output, so I would tend to leave this just out. So this produces the output that comes from the Python terminal that we'll have a look at in just a second. But then for any of the other outputs, again, we can just right click on them like so. And you can see we again have type hints in there. And if we want to post-process any of the data that's coming from this, then we will need to choose the type when it goes back into Grasshopper, basically. So the final thing we can check while we're here, so if I just double click, I'm going to zoom out slightly, but double click on the Python icon in the middle, and you can see that opens up and there's a little sample Python script in there. And obviously it's just got this single line of command here. So setting A and then a second line saying print A. And if I run by pressing the run or the play icon here, then you'll see that's the output that appears in the terminal. And it's also the output if I hover back over here. So the final thing I'll show is just bringing in the bifocals component. So I'm just going to pause and download that and then show you how easy it is to just bring that onto the canvas. Okay, so what I've done in the background is I've just pulled the bifocals component onto the canvas, so that's now loaded it in here. So if I want to use it, I can just double click like so, and then I can start typing, and you can see that bifocals has come up straight away. So I'll just bring that on, and what you can see is all that's done is it's given us this Python 3 script label onto the component, so it provides the component names. If I was working on a bigger definition and I was beginning to find the labels a little annoying for some reason, then all I need to do is double click on the bifocals component and that's it, they disappear. And again, if I double click, they just come back. The final thing I'll just show you, so if you want to try and have the bifocals component loading every time, you can just go into here, so file, and then special folders, and what we want is the components folder. And when we click on that, you can see actually I've added bifocals in there. So if you've made all of those changes and set all of those options and managed to get Python loading correctly, you're now ready to begin on the other video tutorials, which will explain how to construct the the structural analysis part in the Python component, and then also the post-processing part that we're going to carry out in Grasshopper as well. So I will see you in the next video.